Okay. 98A. Okay, so we just finished discussing about the eggs. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 lines from the bottom. So, who the also the Kamedra of Gamliel? Someone came in front of Gamliel, Bar Rebbe, and he said, Amrle Abba lo shir be'arbayim v'sheva, v'ani eshar be'arbayim v'chamesh. So, he said, my father, or
father with man.
Yeah. So they had a question before of what the ratio is. They said, my father wouldn't even have a ratio of 45 and you of 47, and you want me to have a ratio of 45. I mean, this idea of 60. So we're going to see soon how they got to 60. But at the time, it sounds like they had different ratios at one point. But he said, if my father didn't even do it 47 times, so 47 means you have one thing of a prohibition, one piece of prohibition, 47 times permitted food corresponding to that would be enough to nullify. So he said, if he wouldn't even do 47, you want me to do with 45? 45 is less than 47, so I can't do that. So Hahuda asked the comment of Shem Rebbe, I'm like, Avalo shir be'arbim v'chamesh, mani yashar be'arbim v'shalosh. So he said, my father didn't even do it with 45, meaning the ratio wasn't even 45. And you want me to do with 43? Can't be. I can't do less. So one more. He says, "Klum yesh shloshim." Klum yesh shloshim. What you think? There's so the story came to him of a food with and he wanted to nullify it. So he says, "Klum yesh shloshim." Is there 30 times it? Sounds like he held as long as you have 30 times the permissibility corresponding to the prohibited food, it'll be permitted. So says the Gemara, time like a shloshim, but ha'ika shloshim misharinan. What it sounds like, the way he said it was, if you didn't have 30, it's because I don't have 30 times permitted food corresponding to the prohibited food. But if I would have had 30, then you would have really nullified it. It's a very small amount. Rabbi Chanina Guzman. No, he was just saying we don't even have 30 times. Even if I did have 30 times, it still would be prohibited. We don't even have 30 times that. It was just like a way of exaggeration. It wasn't really wasn't being exact that if I need 30 to mevatel, to nullify. It was just a way of saying that we don't even have that. But of course we need more than that. Okay, now here's the world famous source of how we know 60. The famous number 60. So happens to be quite a complicated Gemara, but let's see. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapar. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, in the name of bar Kapar, Kol Isurin Shabbat, all the prohibitions in the Torah, the ratio of nullification is bit shishim. Now is going to be bit shishim. You need 60. Amar lefana Rabbi Shomar Yitzchak, Rebbe Ata Omer Kain Hachi Amar Rav Asi. Rav Asi told me, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, in the name of Bar Kapara. So they're both coming from the same person, but they have two different numbers. Kol Yisur and Shabbatara b'meya. You need 100 times. So it's 60 or 100. And they both learn from the same verse. V'shnehem lo lamduhu ela mizroa b'shela. So zroa, the foreleg. The foreleg. So when the Nazir finishes his Nazirus process, he brings a few sacrifices. So one of them is the ayil. It's the ram that he brings, and it's a shlomim. It is a peace offering. Now the zroa of that peace offering goes to the Kohen, and then the rest of it can be eaten by by anybody. But the point is that the zroa is prohibited for a Jew to eat. Now we're going to see in a second. The Torah says that you have to cook it together. Good morning. So you have to cook it together. So now what's the problem? The zeroa, the foreleg, is only permitted for the Kohanim. The rest of the animal is permitted for everybody. But we know when you cook it together, there's a transfer of taste. A transfer of taste from the foreleg to the rest of the animal. And now the question is, the Torah says that that's permitted. The rest of the animal can be eaten by a regular non-Kohen. So the question is, how could that be eaten? Usually when taste transfers, it's prohibited. So let's see. So the last verse of the page says, Look at the rest of the pasuk, which means it says that you take from the foreleg and you give it to the Kohen. Okay, and now the Gemara brings a brisa that's going to expound on this verse. Vitanya b'sheila, next page, ein b'sheila ella shlema. It has to be cooked. Now, the Gemara assumes that it has to be cooked. The word cooked implies it has to be cooked whole. Rashi says, I don't know how the Gemara knows that. And Tosa says that the word b'sheila itself, figure out how it means that. But either way, the Gemara says b'sheila, cooked, means it has to be cooked whole. Now, what exactly does cooked whole mean? So, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, ein b'sheila ela shenizbashla im ha'ayil. Cooked means it has to be cooked whole, and you have to cook it with the ram. So everyone agrees that you cannot cut it up before you cook it. Everyone agrees you have to cook it with the ram. But there's two opinions in the brisa. Mar savar mechatechla, the hader mevashala, that you're one holds you're going to cut it up and then cook it with the ram. Umar savar mevashala, the hader mechatechla, and the other one holds that you're going to cook it and then cut it up. So the actual other part of the ram remains whole. The foreleg of the ram, so everyone agrees in this version, it has to be cooked with the ram. The question is, do you cut it up first and then cook it with the ram? Or do you cook it with the ram and then cut it up afterwards? But everyone agrees, both opinions, that you have to cook the foreleg, which goes to the Kohanim and is prohibited for non-Kohanim, is cooked with the other part of the ram that is permitted for non-Kohanim. That's one version. V'bais ema, the kule alam mechatech. Or you'll say everyone agrees that that it's cut up and then cooked. One opinion holds that you have to cook it with the ram. And the other opinion holds you cook it in a different pot. So you have two versions of the debate. The first of the rabbis and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. There are four total opinions, meaning it's two people, two different versions of these two opinions. 3 out of 4 of them agree that the zeroa, the foreleg, is cooked with the ram. It's just the last of the fourth opinion. I mean, in the second version, you have 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So in 2B, it's not cooked. But 1A, 1B, and 2A all agree that you're cooking the foreleg with the rest of the ram. The question is, cut up, not cut up, but either way. So the lishna kama, so 1A and 1B, aliba de divrei hakol. According to both opinions, you are cooking the foreleg with the ram together. The lishna basra, in the second version, so 2A, you're cooking it together. 2B, you're not. The lishna basra, aliba de ben yochai. So now, this verse is the source of 60 and 100. We haven't said it all yet, how they get 60 or 100. We're first giving you the background, the basis of what the verse means. So the verse means that you are the ram is going to be whole, and everyone agrees that you have to cook it together. So 3 out of 4 opinions say together. The fourth one says you can cook it in a different pot. So for those 3 out of 4 opinions, 1A, 1B, and 2A, that say the foreleg is cooked with the ram. So how do you get 60? How do you get 100? So it depends what you take into calculation. Do you take just the meat or the meat and the bones? So, Mand Amr B'Shishim, the first opinion we had earlier, says 60 is the amount of nullification. Savar basar va'atzamos bahade basar va'atzamos misha'arinan v'havale b'shishim. So once again, the foreleg is prohibited for a non-Kohen to eat. The ram is permitted for everyone to eat. The problem is there's a transfer of taste from the foreleg to the rest of them. They're cooked together. So the water is the transporter. It's the bus that takes the passengers, takes the taste from the foreleg into the rest of the animal. And yet the Torah says you're allowed to eat, anybody can eat the rest of the animal. So what happened over here? What happened to the forbidden taste? So one opinion says it was nullified. There were 60 times the ram corresponding to the foreleg. The other opinion says there was 100 times the ram corresponding to the foreleg. Now, they're not talking about different animals. It's the same. Every animal is going to have this. Every aisle ram that's brought is going to have this ratio. So how'd you get 60? How'd you get 100? So one opinion says, the one that says 60, which is which means 60, right? 60 is the more stringent one, right? It's the lower number in our head, but it's much, you need, it's the more lenient one. You only need 60 times, not 100. 100 is a lot. So b'shishim summer basar v'atzamos, b'hadei basar v'atzamos m'sharin. You look at the way Rashi learns is a whole to do what this means, but Rashi says that you look at the basar v'atzamos, meaning you look at the meat and the bone of the forbidden of the foreleg. You can look at that compared to the meat and the bone. So meaning you're looking at more. So your ratio is going to be smaller. And therefore it's Rashi says that we have a tradition or the rabbis understood that in this case it's going to be 60 times. So there are 60 times more ram than there is foreleg. And this is the source of how you view bones. So Rashi says Kimlahu Rabbanan. That's the way they understood it. That's the way they understood it. Yeah. That's the way they understood it. Yeah. 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 So the truth is, one of the commentaries to me was always the easiest to understand was that they understood that in general 60 is the amount that it takes to nullify the taste. That's how much it is. They understood that. So if they saw that it's permitted, it was 60 times. If you take into consideration the meat and the bones correspond to the other meat and the bones, 60 was the number. So the way the Ran, I believe, says it is that it's not like a deadlock rule. 60. When you don't know how much when you don't know exactly how much taste was transferred, you can assume that if it's 60 times the amount, it's permitted. But there are cases that are very spicy that we don't say 60, we say more. So you see 60 is not do not wear shotness. Do not wear shotness, that's it. There's no wiggle room around it. Do not eat pig. There's no wiggle room around it. Do that. So 60 is the amount that Chazal understood, 60 or 100, depending on this. They saw in this case that it was permitted, and they know there's a prohibition of transfer of taste. So they saw that it's permitted. At the same time, there's prohibition that came in. So they understood that when you have 60 times permitted corresponding to one part prohibited, that nullifies the taste. So if it's permitted, it must be because it's 60. But you're right, they don't see here 60. 60 was that number. That's why sometimes, for example, we had the idea of 2 days ago about the chef. The non-Jewish chef could taste for you, right? Sephardim on Shabbos, we had Sephardim go with it, Ashkenazim don't go with it. But there's a good example that, or even nowadays, let's say it's a good question. Let's say you eat something, you put a little milk in, the milk fell into your cholent, and you're convinced it's 60 times, right? Let's say you have cholent and you taste it's milky. So I think you have to spit it out. You don't say, no, 60, too bad. That's not how it works. If you're not sure exactly, and you know that there are 60 times, we're going to say it's permitted. But if the professional chef comes and tells you this is a very milky cholent, right? So I believe then that's going to be a problem. So So if you calculate the meat and the bones to the meat and the bones, so then you're going to get, so they understood that there's 60, and yet we see the Torah permitted it. Oh, so it must be permitted. That's the way the 61 held. But the 101 held, Manamar Savar B'meya, Savar, you don't look at the bones. You only look at the meat, right? So you have much more. You look at the ram without the bones. So just look at the meat. So Savar Basar Bahade Basar Mesharina. So you have less foreleg, more ram, B'havale B'meya. And therefore, it's going to be b'meya, and this is where the fun starts about bones. How you look at bones. Bones don't give off taste. Maybe they can absorb taste. Either way. So that's that. Now, so there's your 60 and 100. Now we're going to have a question, and Abai and Rav are going to have their opinions. Okay. We're going to have a brisa with a total of 3 explanations of this brisa. It's a little bit like builds on each other a little bit. So the Hatanya, but the brisa says, the essence of the brisa is going to be that this case of the Nazir ram cannot teach you to anywhere else. There's something unique about it. Once you found something unique about it, maybe it's a special dispensation only over here, but don't apply it everywhere else. That's the general common denominator between all 3 answers. The question is, what's unique about it? So, and then we're going to go back and forth. The Hatanya, the brisa says about the ram that the Nazir brings, Zehu heter haba mechlal iser. This is the permissibility which comes from a prohibition, meaning usually this case would have been prohibited. This case, it's permitted. Okay. So what's zehu? This is permitted. Sounds like this is permitted, but somewhere else it would be prohibited. Where else would it be prohibited? So first attempt is zehu l'ma'ute mai. What's it coming to exclude? Lav l'ma'ute kol isur in Shabbat Torah. Maybe all prohibitions in the Torah are going to be prohibited, even with their they're all going to be prohibited. Meaning, the ram cannot be your teacher to everywhere else that 60 or 100 are permitted. Maybe only this is permitted, coming to exclude the rest of the prohibitions in the Torah. So special dispensation by a ram, that you're allowed to eat the ram even though it was cooked with a foreleg, which is prohibited for you to eat, but that's only over here. Everywhere else, you cannot learn from here. So that brisa would fly in the face of what we just said. We just said that this is the teacher to the rest of the Torah of 60 and 100. And now we're saying, no, it's unique. Only this is permitted. This coming to exclude everywhere else, meaning you cannot learn 60 or 100 to anywhere else. Only here. So now, how are we going to reconcile this? Amar Abaye. No. This brisa lo nitzracha ella l'Rebbe Yehuda. This brisa was teaching a special novelty according to Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yehuda is of the opinion that 2 things of the same species do not get nullified. His source is blood on Yom Kippur, that you have 2 different bloods mixed together, and yet the Torah says they're 2 different bloods. One second, what happened to nullification? The blood of the bull is much more than the blood of the ram, than the blood of the goat. So, than the blood of the goat. So, you see from there that 2 things of the same species do not get nullified. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar, min b'mina lo batel, 2 things of the same species. So in our case, it's both meat, both the foreleg and the ram, it's both meat. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, who usually says, min b'mina lo batel, usually 2 things of the same species do not nullify each other, and therefore they're going to remain prohibited, meaning in this case, it's 2 things that are cooked together, but it's the same species. It's meat and meat. So really, the ram should, the forbidden taste that goes from the foreleg to the ram, because it's the same species, it should not be nullified, and therefore it should prohibit the ram, and yet we say special dispensation over here. So it's a novelty for Rabbi Yehuda. Kamash Malan, the and we learn from here that that's what's unique about this case. That over here it's going to be nullified. But the fact that there's 60 or 100, we still could learn. That we still could learn. It's just there's a novelty here that in general, in the world of Rabbi Yehuda, he says two things that are the same species are not nullified. Here they are nullified, but 60 and 100 could still be taught to the rest of Torah. Yeah. Now, when we said 60 and 100, so we didn't limit it to two things of the same species. Generally speaking, two things of the same species, you can't discern the taste. Right? You have two vegetables, same vegetable, one's truma, one's chulin, you cannot discern the taste. So the whole 60 and 100 really only, usually 99% of the time comes up when it's two different species. You have a mix of tastes, or you could discern the taste. So really, we learn from there, we learn from a case of two things of the same species to really things of different species. So the novelty is in Rabbi Yehuda, but you could still learn 60 and 100 to a case of min v'she'eino mino, that it's going to be permitted to two things of different species will be permitted. That much you could learn. So, okay. So that is Abaye's opinion. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Why don't you learn from here, v'ligmer minei? Learn from here that two things of the same species get nullified. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say two things of the same species don't get nullified? Why don't you say that they do get nullified? Says the Gemara, we can't say that because the Torah already revealed to us in another area, which is Rabbi Yehuda's source, that two things of the same species don't get nullified. Where do we see that? V'ligmar minei galer rachman, like we just said, you have mixed together the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat together. Travayu b'hadei hadadin inhu below batli. The Torah still refers to them as two different things, even though the blood of the bull is much more, and it should really nullify the blood of the goat. And yet we don't say that. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's. That's his source. That two things of the same species do not get nullified. However, there's a special dispensation by the ram that the Nazir brings. In this case, the taste will get nullified. And we could still learn 60 or 100 to the rest of the Torah where it's two different species. So, okay, now, says the Gemara, 1 sec, you have two verses, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Not Isle of the Nazir, the ram of the Nazir tells you two things of the same species, it is nullified. The blood of the bull and the blood of the goat tells you two things of the same species are not nullified. And you just told me an assumption that one's the novelty and one's the rule. Says more why? Maybe say the opposite. Say that really two things of the same species are nullified. Maybe Yom Kippur is the exception. Why'd you go the other way? Why do you learn from Yom Kippur and that's your rule, and then the Nazir is the exception? Say the opposite. The Nazir is the rule and Yom Kippur is the exception. Says Gemara, no, I'll tell you why. There's something novel about the ram, which, because it's novel, it has a leniency. We're more lenient over here. Yom Kippur is not going to have that leniency, and therefore we're not going to say that that's more lenient. That's going to remain the rule. The novel case will have a novelty. The not novel case will not have a novelty. So now the Gemara doesn't tell you what the novelty is. Now, what's the chiddush? A concept that's probably going to come up numerous times is that even though we know that if a little bit of milk falls into meat and there's 60 times corresponding to it, then the whole mixture is permitted. However, you can't go ahead and do that. You can't go ahead and nullify things that would be that would. You can't go ahead and pour milk into Chulin and have less than 60. It's called ein mevatlin isur lechatchila. You can't go nullify prohibitions. You can't say, let me just mix it together because it'll be nullified. You can't do that. It's a question if it's biblical or a question if it's rabbinic, but definitely at this point it sounds like it's biblical. So when it comes to the Zorah B'Sheila, that's what you're doing. You're taking a foreleg and you're cooking it with the ram. You can't do that. That's like taking milk and cooking it with meat and say, oh, now it's permitted. The difference is, though, the Torah allowed you to do it over here. So that's the novelty. That's a novelty. So the novelty is not going to be the rule. The novelty is going to be the exception to the rule. But Yom Kippur, it never said that. So, So, okay. So now, that's why you don't learn from over there. Okay. Now says the Gemara, it's such a novelty to learn nothing from here. Not 60, not 100. You just told me from novelties I don't learn. So don't learn 60 or 100 either. Ihaki is always going on what I just said a second ago. If that's true that you can't learn from novelties, so don't learn 60 or 100 either. Oh, so says the Gemara, 1 second. You think we're learning a leniency, that we're allowing nullification? We're actually learning to everywhere else a stringency. What's the stringency? Biblically, there's a rule called rov, majority, that really midaraisa beruba batel. That really, as long as you have a majority, it should be good. And yet we're learning majority, forget that, you need 60 or 100 times. That's a huge stringency. Biblically speaking, the verse that we have in the Torah is when you have a court case and you have 3 judges, 2 say guilty, 1 says innocent, or you have 21 judges and you have a majority, or 71 judges, you have a majority, you go after the majority. Even though you need the consensus of the Bezdin, but you can go after the majority. So the majority is that's what it would be biblically. That would be the rule. And now we're telling you, no, you need 60 or 100. That's a huge stringency. So there's no problem to learn a stringency from a novel case. To learn a leniency from a novel case while you're being lenient, maybe you're only lenient in the very unique case where you're already lenient. But to learn a stringency that you need more, that there's no problem to do. And that's what we do. So that is the opinion of Abaye. Rava says something else. Rava says that, once again, we're bothered by that the Brisa says there's some novelty by the case of the ram, that it's only permitted here, but everywhere else it should be prohibited. So we first thought everywhere else meant all other prohibitions in the Torah, which was a problem with our 60, 100 exposition. So Abaye said, no, it's only a novelty in the world of Rabbi Yehuda, that 2 things of the same species are usually not nullified. Here they're nullified. Rava says, lo nitzrucha ela litam ke'ikr. Tam ke'ikr is the way we refer to taste transfer. Meaning, you would have thought, without the novelty of tam ke'ikr, that we take taste into consideration, you would have thought that the only thing prohibited in the whole Torah is substance. It has to be substance. Food is prohibited, it's food. Taste is somewhere in the middle. It's not nothing, right? When you take anything or you have the taste of something in it, what is the taste? It's not a thing. It's not an object. You can't hold the taste. At the same time, it's not nothing. You can taste it, right? So it's somewhere in the middle. So the fact that we take that into consideration is a certain novelty in that, because it's not a piece of meat. It's the taste of the meat. So that's referred to tam ke'ikr. It's the taste ke'ikr. Ikr is like the primary thing itself. So it's not pork itself, it's the tam ke'ikr. We take the taste of the pork, ke'ikr, and treat it like it's the actual thing itself. So we need lo el tam ke'ikr, the bekachim in general in the world of kachim. So now, the way Rashi goes is that right now the Gemara assumes that the idea that we take taste into consideration and treat it on a biblical level as prohibited is only a rule by sacrifices, by kachim. The bekachim aser, but by other places, by regular chulin, by regular case of chulin of meat and milk, something like that, it would only be the taste transfer would be rabbinic, or let's say non-kosher meat goes into your you cook non-kosher with your meat. So, and now there's taste transfer. Right now, Rashi assumes, and he actually goes like this, through and through. We don't go like that. But right now, we're assuming that the only time it applies biblically is by kachim, where you take the taste and treat it like the thing itself. So in general, it's prohibited. Here we have a case of kachim. It's a peace offering. The ram that the Nazir brings is a peace offering. It's a shlamim. And yet we say that there's taste transfer, and yet we say it's permitted. Kamash Malan, the Hakashari. That's the novelty over here. In the world of sacrifices, usually sacrifices, the taste is going to be prohibited. In this case, it's permitted. But to learn 60 or 100 everywhere else, that's fine. It wasn't coming to exclude two things of different species in the rest of Torah. That we could still learn. We're just telling you a novelty by kachim. This is permitted, while by the world of sacrifices, it'll be prohibited. Next page. Says more, same copy and paste as before a little bit. The ligmar mineh. So 1 second. Why don't you learn from here that taste is always is not treated like the thing itself by sacrifices? You have a verse. So no, Galirachmana, the Torah revealed us in another context, Gabe chatas, by a sin offering. What did it say by a sin offering? Kol asher yiga b'bsar yikdash. Anything, like King Midas, right? Anything the chatas touches is going to have the same halachas as the chatas. It's going to, if it touches a regular piece of meat, now you can only eat the meat. You only have 1 day to eat the meat, only in a certain area, just like the sin offering itself. How'd that happen? Because the taste transfer. Oh, biblical verse that taste transfers is we take the taste and we treat it like the meat itself. So lihios kamo she'im psulati pasel. If the chatas is an invalid chatas, so whatever it touches is going to be invalid. So if a good offering that gets touched by an invalid chatas offering, it'll make that offering invalid. Vim kshera, and if you have a regular piece of meat that now gets touched by the chatas, so tokal kichamer shabbat. So that's going to be treated like it's astringency. Yeah. I assume it's obvious, but I have to look it up. I'm assuming it's only a chatas that's, if it's cold and it touches something, there's no taste transfer. Right. So it's not exactly like King Midas, that example, but it has to be able to transfer the taste. Yeah, it has to be that. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. So, fine. Now, says the Gemara, one thing, you have two verses. One tells you the ram is going to be permitted, and one tells you the chatas is going to be prohibited. So, do you treat the taste like the thing itself or not? One verse says not, one verse says yeah. So, why did you know how'd you treat that as the rule, that is the exception? Say the opposite. The ram is going to be the rule, and the chatas will be the exception. Umayi chazes, how did you see the Gamrina Mihai, Ligmar Mihai? Says the Gemara, same as before. The ram has a special dispensation that you can take two things and nullify them, even though usually you cannot nullify prohibitions. So since it has a leniency, it's going to be more lenient in this area as well, and therefore we're not going to take the taste and treat it like the thing itself and prohibit it, rather it'll be permitted. If that's true, it's the same as before. Once you can't learn from there anywhere, so to 60 and 100 should not be able to be taught anywhere either. Says the Gemara, same as before. Says the Gemara, no. Biblically, it should be nullified in a majority. And we're very stringent that we're requiring 60 or 100. That's a huge stringency. So, therefore, for a stringent, just because you're lenient over here, doesn't mean you cannot learn a stringency to other areas. If you're lenient over here, you can't learn a leniency to other areas. But if you're stringent over here, does not mean that you cannot learn if you're lenient over here, does not mean you cannot learn a stringency in other areas. That's fine. So both these opinions agree, like our assumption was, that the ratio here is either 60 or 100. That will teach you to other areas that's a ratio you need for nullification. Both Abai and Rava agree, based on the Brisa, there is some novelty over here. Abai says the basic novelty is usually two species for Yehuda are not nullified. Here they are nullified. Rava is saying a little bit more than that not only that, but he's saying that two species, when there's a taste transfer, usually in the world of sacrifices, we take it very seriously. Here it's permitted. But they both agree it's not coming to exclude the teaching the 60 or 100. That is still going to be permitted. That will still be the rule of nullification in other areas. Ravina has a totally different answer. Ravina Amar, a third answer. Lo nitzch el l'makam chatach. Amar makam chatach ba'am aser b'hakashari. So usually when you have something which is prohibited and then you have to cut it off. So I think the case was, I wasn't here for this, but in the beginning of the previous chapter, when you have you shecht an animal and the child is permitted, if it's in utero, it's permitted. What if the hand's dangling out of the womb? So then you have to cut off the hand. So the part that you cut off, that part's going to be prohibited. That even the part you cut off, right? That part that you cut off is going to be prohibited. So the makom chatach, the part that you cut off of prohibition, is usually prohibited. So two things are connected. this part's prohibited, this part's permitted. So when you cut off the prohibited part, so that area that's cut is going to be prohibited as well. That's generally true. In this case, though, when you take the foreleg and you remove it, the rest of the ram, even the part that was cut, is going to be permitted. That's the uniqueness of this case of Zroa Beshela, of the foreleg that gets cooked with the rest of the ram. But once again, 60 and 100, you could still be taught other places. It's just a special leniency that the makom that the area that usually gets cut off, it's prohibited. The area of the cessation of the cut is prohibited. Here it'll be permitted. Okay, that is that. So now that we brought two opinions, 60 and 100, and we brought the source they both agree upon, and then we had a brisa that had a question on the source, and we have three answers why that brisa is not gonna, is not going to slug up to knock our assumption out of the park. Rather, the brisa was answered. We have three novelties by the ram, but it's never. But we also learn from here that the ratio is 60 or 100. Now, on this idea of 100, we're going to bring a question. The usual ratio by truma is you have to have 100 times a non-truma to nullify truma. Now, there's going to be a difference. What if it's something which can cause things to rise, sourdough, or things that are very spicy, spices? So, if it's the same species, right? So then you can't really discern. You'll need 100 and 100 to 1 to nullify it. If it's things of different species, we'll see in a second. And if you have things of different species and one of them causes something to rise or it causes it to be very spicy, so then we're going to see 100 is not going to help you because it's still doing its thing. You could taste the spiciness in the permitted food, so it's not going to help you 100 times it. So in the middle of these two mishnayos in Orla is going to come out a question on the opinion of 100. So it's going to be a lot of half a page of paperwork just to get to that one point. So Yosef Rav Dimi v'Kamar Lahala Hashmaitz, he went and he said over this opinion of 100. Amar le'Abaye the Koli Surin Shabbatorah b'Meya. Abaye is like, 1 second, you want to tell me that the ratio in the rest of Torah is 100? I'll prove to you it's not true. Okay. Now we have a Mishnah in Orla in the second chapter. Lama Amru Kol Mechametz Umetabel Umedam Lahachmir. Why does it say over there things that are mechametz, chametz, sourdough, causes to rise? Umetabel Umedame. Metabel, spices.
Lens.
What?
Lens.
Lens?
Yeah, lens of lens.
Oh, blend. Sorry, just a mixture. Umedame. So, or dimua is also a mixture of truma and chulin together. The metabel is a mixture of the spices, and medam is a mixture of just regular truma. So they said by these three cases, lahachmir, you have to be stringent. Lahachmir min umino. 1 second. Lama amr kol lahachmir min umino and lahachmir min v'shein by things of the same species. Once again, we're going to be stringent, and by things of different species, we're going to be stringent and lenient. Okay, that's the introduction. What does that mean? V'katani seifa, and it says at the next Mishnah, the 7th Mishnah of that chapter. What does it mean? Lahachmir min v'shein omino ketzad. When are you stringent? When are you lenient by two things of different species in the world of truma and chulin? So it says ketzad. You have the lentils mixed with the beans that are cooked with the beans. So now you have truma and you have chulin. Truma, obviously, a non-Kohen cannot eat. So, and it's all mixed together. So now, if the prohibited, meaning the truma, the part that the non-Kohen cannot eat, yesh bahem bin no saint tam, it's giving over its flavor. So then I don't care that the ratio is 100 to 1. If it's giving over it's flavor, it's doing its thing, it's activated. So then it's not going to help you 100 to 1. It's always going to be stringent. If it's giving over taste, it's going to be stringent. Ein bahen b'no same time. If it's not giving over the taste, then it depends. B'bein sheyesh ben lahalos b'mei v'echad, then ein lahalos b'mei v'echad mutter. So by these cases of spices and and sourdough, if it's different species and therefore you can discern the taste, it's not going to help you 101. But if it doesn't give over its taste, you have spices, but it's not giving over the taste. Like it's very bland or something like that. So even if you don't have 100-1, it's still going to be permitted. So says the Gemara. So now how does this what does it have to do with us? So says the Gemara, Ein bahen lahalos b'mei ve'echad. So it's a leniency over here that usually that in this case when there's not 100, of course 100-1 ratio, it's going to be permitted. So says the Gemara. Okay, so usually what would you need for the ratio? Well, if there's a novelty in this Mishnah which says that 1 second. Sorry. Usually, 1 second. Yeah, when it doesn't give over its taste, so then you don't need 101. So, okay, so if you don't need 101, how much do you need? The novelty of the Mishnah is you don't need 100 times corresponding to it. So how much do you need? So, 648, okay. Ein behem lahalos b'mei ve'echad, so ela b'mai. What do you need? What's the novelty of the Mishnah? You don't need 100 times corresponding to it. What do you need? The Gemara assumption is you must need 60. Now, if the general rule of nullification is 100, so let's start from this again tomorrow. 648. Okay. We'll start from this case. That's right.